Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the June 11th meeting of the City of Tampa Variance Review Board. My name is Gary Brown, and I am the chairman this evening. From my left, the members of the board are
Michael Villa,
Dustin Pastor,
Brett Feldman,
Susan Long.
also in attendance this evening are Kristen Morris, Assistant City Attorney, Tawanda Anthony, and Eileen Rosario Ducksworth of Land Development Coordination. Is Mr. Knox here? He's hiding. Of Natural Resources, anybody from Transportation? No. All right. I will take just a few minutes to review tonight's procedures. Cases will be called in the order that they appear on the agenda. When your case number and applicant's name are called, please stand in either aisle to the side of the room to acknowledge that you are here. Staff will then give a brief introduction to the board of each application. When you approach the podium, please speak into the microphone and state your name, address, and if you have been sworn in. The applicant and/or their agent will have 10 minutes to give testimony, present witnesses, and documentation as a part of their presentation. This is your time to present all of your evidence. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to the application will then have 3 minutes each. After that, the board may have an opportunity to ask questions regarding the application. Finally, the applicant will have an additional 5 minutes for a rebuttal if needed. The time periods, as stated, will be kept by the chair. Any additional information, such as pictures or plans that have not been previously submitted as a part of your petition and you intend to present at this hearing for consideration and support of your petition, must be individually presented and accepted by the board. After acceptance by the board, you must submit the item to staff for it to be entered and made a part of the permanent record. The board bases its decision on competent and substantial evidence which is presented this evening and which meets the criteria required by the city's code of ordinances. The variance granted by the board will be only for what is shown on the site plan and will be compliant with any terms and conditions stated in the approval by the board. You must have 4 votes for the variance to be approved. If an insufficient vote is obtained, the case shall be automatically carried over for consideration at the board's next meeting. If approved, your variance will expire 2 years from today's date. All other city codes will need to be met. Only if there are 5 board members present, then only 3 votes are needed to deny an application. So to get approved tonight, you need 4. To get denied, you only need 3. If your case is continued, it will be continued to either August 13th, our July agenda is already full, so it will be continued to either August 13th public hearing or the September 10th public hearing. If you wish to appeal the Variance Review Board's decision to the City Council, you must file a petition for review of a board decision within 10 business days of the decision. If your variance is granted, you will not be able to pull any permits until after the 10-day appeal period is passed. Your cooperation will ensure that this meeting runs smoothly and will be greatly appreciated. Before we begin the first case, is there any business regarding the agenda that staff would like to address?
Tawanda Anthony, Land Development. There are 3 items that are requesting a continuance. The first one is VRB 1917. And we're requesting that they be continued to August.
All right. Is there a motion by anyone in the board?
Are we open? We're not open for any more cases in July, am I correct?
Right, July's
so
good.
it would have to be August what?
August 13th.
13th.
13th? Okay.
Yep, or September 10th.
That's the other one I need.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we do have room in August.
Okay. I'd like to move that VRB 1917 be continued to August 13th.
Is there a second?
second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, next.
The next item is VRB 1934. And the applicant is requesting to be continued to a future date. So we're requesting the September hearing date.
They are requesting September.
Well, they're requesting to a future date, so I feel more comfortable pushing them back further than August.
I move VRB 1934 be continued to September 10th, 2019.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm aware that my colleague has had some involvement in this case, so I would be abstaining from any vote on this.
On that,
Okay.
okay. All
I
right,
will as well be abstaining.
1, 2, 3. That's,
Yeah, but it's good.
Three.
Only 3 people can vote? That's,
Three is sufficient for business,
Okay.
so that is fine for you to continue it. Hopefully there'll be more board members when it actually comes before you.
okay.
so you want to second it?
Job, we need a second, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, next.
And the last item is VRB 1970, and we're requesting the August 13th hearing date.
All right, do we have a motion?
Sure, I move that VRB 1970 be continued to August 13th.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All righty,
Thank you, Board.
you're welcome. All right, with no further business to discuss, is there a motion to approve last month's minutes without objection?
I so move.
All right, we don't need or I guess we do. Second on that, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, they've been approved. I will now ask Ms. Moore to address the board regarding any ex parte communications.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, I would ask if any of the members of the board have had any ex parte communications regarding the matters that are coming before you this evening. And if you've had any verbal communications, I'll ask you to disclose the sum and substance of those communications, when and where they occurred and with whom they occurred, and if you've had any written communications, to disclose the nature of it and file it in the record.
Ms. Mora, for VRB 19-65, I am aware that one of my colleagues is related to the applicant. The knowledge of this relationship is generally the substance of the communication, and I don't have any problem with sitting and hearing it.
Okay. We'll note that during that hearing, and then go through it at that point, if that's okay?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
All right, at this time, all persons who will be presenting evidence of testimony of the board shall rise and be sworn in.
If you may give any testimony regarding any of the matters this evening, you should stand and raise your right hand at this time so you may be sworn.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. You may have a seat.
All right, staff would like to call the first application, VRB 19-18, located at 3101 West Prospect Road.
Thank you. Tawanda Anthony Land Development. Again, this is item VRB 1918 at 3101 West Prospect Road. This case was heard in March, and it is a continuance. The applicant is seeking to reduce the rear yard from 20 feet to 8 feet to construct a master bedroom and bathroom addition. The property is zoned RS60, and was originally constructed in 1980. The applicant purchased the house in 2012. A tree consultation was conducted by staff in April of 2019.
Do any of the board members have any questions for, oh, you're still doing it, never mind.
And here is the aerial of the site, West Prospect Road. Here is the location of the subject property. Here's a view facing front. Here's a view facing west. Here's a view facing east. Here's an aerial of the property. You can see this is the single-family home. This is a pool enclosure, and this is an accessory structure in the rear. And this is where they're requesting the addition, from 20 to 8 feet. And here's the site plan, the area, and the hatched area is the area where they're requesting the setback reduction. And this would be the addition. Any questions for staff?
Seeing none. Okay, will the applicant please come forward to present your case and state your name, address, and if you've been sworn in. You'll have 10 minutes.
Where's the applicant? Oh dear.
Applicant is not here for 19-18. Do we want to make a motion to postpone it, push them back to the end? Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to move VRB 19-18 to the end of the agenda for this evening, where we can address it again at that time.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay. All right. Staff, you're up again.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, this is item VRB 1943. The property address is 4318 South Coolidge Avenue. The applicant is seeking to reduce the side yard setback from 7 feet to 4.3 feet, and the rear yard setback from 3 feet to 2.1 feet to vest existing carport and accessory structure. The lot is zoned RS60, and the house was constructed in 1953. The applicant purchased the property in 1976. The property was cited for zoning violations. I'll now orient you with the site. Here's the aerial. Here's Coolidge Avenue, and here's the property. Here's a photo facing front of the property. Here's a view facing to the west. And here's another view of the property. And here's the site plan, Coolidge Avenue. Here's the side yard setback reduction request, and here's the rear yard setback reduction request for the accessory structures. Any questions for staff?
I see none. Looks like the applicant's here. Please come forward and state your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
Name's Earl Ayers, 4316 South Coolidge Avenue. Yes, I have been sworn.
Donna Ayers, 4316 South Coolidge Avenue. And yes, I have been sworn. We're here for Grandma, who is 4318.
Eva Pearson, 4318 South Coolidge Avenue, Tampa 33611, and I have been sworn.
Okay, thank you.
I will present her pictures.
Okay.
These are the two sheds in question. When they bought the house in 1976, 40 years ago, the shed to the right was already there. Then, approximately 30 years later, her late husband, while she was at work, had a company come and build the other shed, and that's why there's two sheds. And then she didn't think more about it until the guy behind her got cited for something, and then said, well, she's got two sheds, and so then she got cited, and is going through the process of the paperwork to get everything done. When we did the survey, we also found out that the carport, which was not part of the violation, but it's part of the variance, needed some more inches also. And the carport was there when they bought the house in 1976. And like that, it's like we were saying before, it's nothing to do with anything she did. They bought the house like that. They didn't know it needed that variance. So she keeps the sheds maintained very well, and she stores all her stuff. And the thing she say to us many times is, She's got a lot of junk, it's her junk, and she wants to keep it, so she wants the variance so she can keep her stuff that's in there. The carport, oh, I had that right here. When they showed that other picture before, I can't see what it, oh, there it is. This is the question, the area in question. And like I said, that was there when they bought the house in 1976. And the last time before we had the continuance of this, there were people that were, I just want to address people, the water, people say like the property lines. And we wanted to show that this is behind her sheds, and to try, because we feel the water comes into us, not out to them. And then even behind those plants, there's dirt and stuff. Plus she runs pumps every time that it rains and stuff like that. Grandma, anything else you want to say? Any questions? That's it. That's it for the presentation. It's 2 sheds and the carport.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on or against this application? If so, please come forward. Seeing none, does the board have any questions for the applicant or staff? Go ahead, Mr. Pastor.
I just wanted to clarify, the sheds are the rear setback request, which is
Yes.
10 or 11 inches, right?
Yes.
And the carport is the side request, 2.5 feet or so.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Feldman?
Mr. View.
Mr. View, go ahead.
So the sheds in the back, I know that one was constructed prior to you buying the house, and then the other came afterwards. Can you describe the construction? Are these permanently affixed to the ground, or are they movable,
permanent.
or how would you describe that?
You might have to speak up.
They're movable, yes.
They are movable?
Yes,
Just one of them.
they're, huh?
One is movable.
I thought they both had wood floors.
Oh, yeah, they do. I thought you meant move them out of the place.
They're on a concrete slab.
It would be a job to move them because they're built to the ground. They're not a slab or nothing, so they would.
So it wouldn't be
movable.
impossible to move them, but it wouldn't be probably the best thing in the world.
It wouldn't be no fun.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Mr. Feldman?
All right, just confirming, both sheds have been in these locations for in excess of 30 years?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Long, do you have anything? I don't have anything, Mr. Custer.
Could you put up the picture again real quick,
Yep.
please?
That's them?
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Long, go ahead.
Are those sheds cinder block sheds, concrete blocks?
No.
or
They're
wooden?
wood.
Yes, they are cinder block?
They're wood.
Oh, they're wood?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any more questions? Applicant or staff? Okay, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal based on the questions you were asked.
No rebuttal.
She just needs her storage.
Okay. I mean, you have no other hardship reasons why you couldn't possibly move them, or?
Oh, they're so full, it'd take a crane to move them. She has them quite full of many, many years of just accumulating things.
30, 40 years.
Yep.
No, you're good. All right, I don't have any other questions. All right, is there a motion to close the public hearing and move to board discussion and/or a motion? Okay. Is there a motion or board discussion?
I think the one that they constructed, there's an argument to be made, why is it there and could it be moved? But the practicality of it is that the one that was already there existing was there when they bought it, and this one matches that one in the rear dimension. So to ask them to move the one that was there when they bought it seems unreasonable. to ask them to just to move the one that they built, which is right next to the other one, also seems unnecessary because the other one, you know, reasonably should be able to stay. Carport, obviously, in my opinion, we should vest. It's been there for a very long time and it was built that way. So when you look at the hardships of the site, then, you know, maybe there's an argument to be made that those sheds can be moved. But when you look at the practical difficulty of it, and the fact that they were already, you know, at least one of them was already there when they purchased it, then I don't think it's practical to ask them to move it 10 inches, or to just move one of them 10 inches, or any other, you know, scenario that we might come up with. So I would support this variance.
Anybody else have anything to say?
Given that all of these structures have been there 30 years or more, I would vest them all.
Somebody like to make a motion?
All right, I'd like to move the variance request for VRB 19-43 for property located at 4318 South Coolidge Avenue, Tampa, Florida. Presented the public hearing today for, excuse me, to seek relief from sections 27-156 and section 27-290 in order to reduce the side yard setback from 7 feet to 4.3 feet and the rear yard setback from 3 feet to 2.1 feet to vest an existing carport and accessory structures. And I would base that on the fact that these, all three of these structures have been in place for 30 years or more, two of which, of course, were not placed there by the applicant, and therefore I would approve or at least submit the motion for your approval. Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion for approval. Is there a second? Second. All right, second by Mr. Pastor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Your application was approved 5-0.
Thank you so much. You can stop stressing now, Grandma. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, staff, next case.
Wanda Anthony Land Development. This is item VRB 1940. The property address is 3102 North Woodrow Avenue. The applicant is seeking to reduce the rear yard from 20 feet to 14.2 feet due to a lot split reconfiguration to allow for the construction of a new single-family residence. The property is zoned RS50 and was originally constructed in 1946. The applicant purchased the property in 2018. A tree consultation was conducted by staff in February of 2019. Transportation did find the request consistent, but they did provide some comments. Please show the location of 2 paved parking spaces, and please show the driveway apron in the front, the right-of-way to be paved with concrete. I'll now orient you with the site. Here's the area.
Don't see it. Earth to AV. There they go.
And here's the aerial of the site. Woodrow Avenue, Braddock, and here's the property. Here's a view facing the front of the property. Here's a view facing the corner. This is another view facing the corner, and you can also see the encroachment in the rear. And here's a survey of the property. Woodrow Avenue. This is the front and this is the rear. And you can see this is the lot here where they're requesting if the variance is approved for the lot split. Any questions for staff?
Go ahead, Mr. Pastor.
So, before it's split, is that a side yard? I don't understand what's causing, I guess we're trying to vest it because it's old. But has that always been the rear yard? Is that,
Tawanda Anthony, yes, that's always
Okay.
based on the configuration of the lot, but you can't create a non-conforming
Got it.
structure.
okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Will the applicant please come forward and state your name, address, and if you've been sworn?
Name is Antonio Hernandez. I'm the agent for the applicant. Address is 3102 North Woodrow Avenue. I have been sworn, and this is the applicant.
Thank you. My name is Jose Hernandez. I'm the applicant, 3102 North Woodrow.
And you've been sworn.
All right, you have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Okay, so like we were talking about, basically the idea is to so because it's a corner lot, actually both corners are considered front according to the permit department. So when we split the lots, then what we're trying to do is turn Woodrow into the front. Right now, this area right here where we're trying to vest from 20 feet down to 14 feet, it's considered the back but also the side yard from what I understood from the permitting board. So we're just trying to vest it from 20 feet down to 14 feet to keep the garage that's sitting there on the house. For this area right here, basically when we split the lot, it stops being grandfathered in. So this is going to become the rear setback, and then we're going to have side setback of 7 feet, which is more than sufficient. And then this area is going to become the front of the house.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add? Any other hardships that you have to deal with, or?
Well, currently we have the garage is sitting right here. So basically we would have to tear out the garage to be able to meet current code. The home was purchased like this back last year in 2018, and the house has the garage already structured in there, was built like that.
Okay, does that complete your presentation?
Yes, that's it.
All right, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on behalf of this or against this application? All right, seeing none, board, have any questions for the applicant or staff?
I have a question.
Ms. Long?
How many feet is it from the northern edge of the garage to, I don't know, the split line?
7 feet.
7 feet, okay,
Yes.
so it is just at 7 feet, okay.
Yes, it's just the rear setback. The sides are good, the front is good, it's just the rear setback.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Pastor?
I have a question for Ms. Anthony. If this lot was not split, and understanding that new construction makes you bring things up to code, but let's say that the lot wasn't split, it would still be non-conforming as it sits, is that correct? it's not the split that's causing the nonconformance. The split is just causing it to be reviewed again.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, if it were not split, there are some encroachments that would exist. But due to the lot split reconfiguration, they have to bring the structure into conformance.
But would the rear yard of the existing property today still be 20 feet?
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, when I'm looking at the measurements now, and it's planted 89 by 100, so this would be the front, and this would be considered the corner.
And then the rear would be the north side?
Correct, this would be the rear, and this would be a side yard.
Okay, so the split does cause this to be the rear. Otherwise, the rear would be the north side.
Correct, as a result of the split, this becomes the front now.
Okay.
Well, but they don't meet, in its current condition, the 89 front is that's not a 20-foot setback. That would
Correct.
also have to be a 20-foot setback if they came in to do an addition.
That's true.
So they would be asking for a substantial reduction to the front yard. But in this case, that doesn't come into play, right?
Right.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions? Based on those questions, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
I don't have anything else to add.
All right, so this completes your presentation?
Yes.
All right, board, is there a motion to move out of the public hearing and into board discussion and or motion? Mr. Pastor, you make a motion? All right, go for it.
This is an odd one, but I think Mr. Brown kind of summed it up for me. If you leave it exactly how it is and you don't split the lot and you leave the house, you've got a huge front yard encroachment. They don't have to do anything about it because it's existing, but it's much more of an encroachment than what happens when you split it. So you're talking about 7 feet needing to be 20 versus 14 feet needing to be 20. Doesn't seem reasonable to tear down an existing house when it's non-conforming in either state. This is the lesser of the two non-conformances. So it's a very odd situation, but I think I can support it. But I'd like to hear what other board members think.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
I mean, I'll just say this. I never see reason to waste a good structure if it's in good shape and if it's, if it's for the most part in compliance. And just by changing the configuration of the lot, as two other board members have already pointed out, you're just switching from one non-conformance to another. So it doesn't seem that problematic in this instance.
Ms. Long?
I have a couple of thoughts. First of all, the house was built in 1946, so whoever is next to, abutting the backyard, the now backyard, obviously doesn't have a problem with it. It's been there for a long time. Second of all, there's an alley on that side, which hasn't been vacated to my knowledge. There's nobody has said it has. But that just adds a buffer to this property and the neighbors, so I would approve it.
Any other comments or questions? Somebody like to make a motion?
I move that the variance request for case VRB 1940 for the property located at 3102 North Woodrow Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in the rear yard from 20 feet to 14.2 feet with the encroachment of eaves and gutters based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 2780 of the city code. Specifically that they're vesting an existing structure that does not conform in its current state and does not conform in the proposed state, but in order to preserve the structure for practicality and the fact that this is the lesser of the two nonconformities, they're asking to vest.
All right, I was seconded by Ms. Long. All in favor, or is there any other question or discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You're approved 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next case, staff.
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, this is item VRB 1963. The property address is 4902 West Idaho Street. The applicant is seeking to reduce the side yard setback from 7 feet to 59 inches to vest existing conditions. The lot is zoned RS50, and the house was constructed in 1967. The applicant purchased the property in 2010. The property was cited in February 2019 for zoning violations regarding existing structure. I'll now orient you with the site. Here's the property, here's West Idaho Street. Here's a view facing north. Here's another view facing north, and this is the corner. Here's a view facing east. And this is the front of the property based on zoning definitions because it's the narrowest portion of the lot. And here's another view, and this is the violation in question. Here's the site plan, and you can see the encroachment here. Are there any questions for staff?
You had said 59 inches. You meant .59 feet, which is
Yes.
7 inches, 7 inches?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
All right. Any other questions?
This says a side yard setback. Wouldn't the front is on Idaho, correct? 'Cause they're in a street on
The
the other
front
two.
is Mascot. Based
Pardon?
on zoning definition, it's the narrowest portion of the lot.
Mascot. Oh, all right, that's how it got to be this, okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. Question answered.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. We don't have any. Applicant, please come forward, state your name, address, and if you've been sworn in.
Pamela Jo Hatley. I represent MHLF, which is the owner. This is Mike Hooper. He's a representative for the owner. I've been sworn in. I believe he has not.
Okay, staff, please. Has anybody else that's come in not been sworn? If so, please stand up. We'll do it now.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as staff represented, this house was constructed in 1967. It has, as far as we know, existed in its current form, location, and orientation since that time. The current owners, when they purchased the house, actually they purchased in 2009 a related entity and then conveyed into a trust. They rehabbed the property and did some improvements, modernization to the interior, but did not change the configuration or the orientation of the house from the way it currently exists. I first want to address the hardship criteria. First of all, we did some record research, and we could not obtain from the county any building permits. We could not determine whether the city, the city of Tampa, we could not determine whether the city had granted any variances at the time of construction because that information is not available. However, historical property records do show that this property is in a subdivision that was platted in 1892. In 1955, it was acquired by Mamie Holden, and property appraiser records show that the house, again, was constructed in 1967. Clerk of court records show that Mamie Holden paid real estate taxes in 1968, and also that record suggested it was her homestead at that time, so she was living there then. In 1980, Mamie Holden's husband conveyed the property to himself and his granddaughter, so it was in the same family all that time. This is a community that's rapidly changing. There are new homes being constructed and new homes that have been recently constructed. This is one of the few homes in this community that are apparently original construction or close to it in this old, very old subdivision. The house was constructed facing Idaho, even though that was the widest part of the lot. So the city considers that a side yard, and as a result, the actual rear of the home faces what would be a side yard, and that's why the odd configuration and the odd orientation. But the house was originally constructed that way. Over the years, since 1967, this house has existed and has not substantially interfered with the health, safety, or welfare of others or interfered with others' property. Granting the variance would not injure the health, safety, or welfare of others, but would simply maintain the status quo that has existed since 1967. Granting the variance would also just vest the existing structure and preserve the property rights of the owner and the residents who live there now. The residents who live there are tenants, and if the variance is not granted, then the property owner will be subject to losing property rights and loss of property value. Is my time up?
Nope.
Okay,
You
have some
still have
photographs.
time. You have 6 minutes.
Okay. I would just like to show some photographs. Let's see, that's upside down. There we go. So that's the front of the property, the way it looks today, and that's, again, facing Idaho. This is the side, and I should say the front of the house. This is the side of the house. And this photograph shows the new construction on the lot to the south. So there's a new home that's just recently been built on the south. These photographs show a little closer view of the property boundary. There's just a few inches between this existing house and the actual property boundary. The new house is constructed there and put up a fence that comes almost to where the existing house starts. And so these photographs show a very closer up view. So that's the way that's the existing situation. No changes. We're not requesting any changes. We're just requesting to vest the existing structure. And that's it.
You have a little bit of time if you want it.
Okay, I'll
You don't
save
need
that
to.
for rebuttal.
Well, it doesn't work
Do
that
you have
way.
any
But
questions for me?
no, not yet. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on behalf of this or against this application? If so, please come forward, state your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
Good evening. My name is Rhonda Trust Nelson, and I come as a friend to Ms. Black and to the owner, and I'm the former owner of this property. I had the pictures, but my pictures didn't come up. But I'm coming to speak as goodwill for the property. And in 1987, when I purchased this property, I had the property, I put that fence up, and I had the property line, everything made up. I brought the lot behind the property. Confusion came with Ford Consumers Company. I'm still fighting this battle now. And that's the reason I come to give my voice pleasant free will that everything respectfully be chosen. Because when I first bought the property, about this much from the back of the house was the property line. when I bought the property behind there, that's how that fence was extended. I wasn't smart enough to put the fence around both of the lots. But still, I'm still fighting that battle. And I just want, the best, that the house, the back of the house don't be, cut off or anything shortened. But that's where the property line was set, for. So, to the goodwill and blessing for all that's involved. I just wanted to voice, that that's where it was at, and it was because of me that it was extended.
Okay.
Y'all have a nice day, thank you.
All right,
For
you're
hearing.
welcome.
Be
Would
blessed.
anybody else want to come forward to speak on this? State your name, address, and if you've been sworn, you have 3 minutes.
I'm Nora Kratke. I'm at 7403 South Mascot Street, and yes, I have been sworn.
Michael Kratke, 7403 South Mascot Street. I have been sworn in.
Are you together or separate?
We're together.
Okay,
We're
all
together.
right.
We'd like to present some other views of the home in question.
Oop, turn it, there you go.
So this property that's being considered the side yard is our front yard. So the structure here this is our property line with the green grass here. And this is, you can see already, which I'll show another view, is the drain pipe from the other property that is already on our property. And this is how close the structure is to our property. And this is how close the structure is to our home. And we feel that this presents a significant hardship because of the egress that's needed for fire protection should something happen, as well as you can see that sloped roof. Any of the rain or storms that come, that water is coming directly onto our property, as well as you can see the structure is dilapidated and does need repair regardless. So we don't feel that that would be a hardship for the owner of the property, and it is a rental property.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on or against this application? Okay, seeing none. Board, any questions for the people that testified, or board, or applicant? Go ahead, Mr. V.
I have one question for Ms. Hadley. I'm looking at the survey and the diagram of the property, and it appears that this appendage, which comes out on the west side, which they were just showing the photos of, so it looks like that's 5.7 feet deep, so therefore it looks like the entire structure falls within the 7-foot setback, not just the appendage.
That's exactly what the survey shows, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And if I may just address some things that were
Well-
stated. I'm
Well, hang
sorry.
on, we're still asking
I'm
questions.
sorry, yes.
Yeah, hang on. Mr. Prester?
What occurs in that space that bumps out? What room is that in the house?
The bathroom.
Okay. Do you feel like, in your professional opinion, that that was added on at any point?
No, it looks like it was there when we bought the house.
Okay.
It looked like it was, it's a laundry bathroom back, and I don't know when the previous owner had it. It looked like it'd been there. It was the same wood, same stuff that was in there from
Okay.
the rest of the house. So, to the best of my knowledge, it was there.
Ms. Hadley, you mentioned that you were looking at some property records. Do you have anything to submit to the record?
Yes,
that
I do.
That would show how far back this house was situated like it was?
I would like to submit to the record my written report addressing the hardship issues, a copy of the plat that was filed in 1892, a copy of the deed from 1955 to Mamie Holden, a copy of the property appraiser's property record card that shows the outline of the property and the year it was built in 1967, and a property record from the clerk of court's office that shows Mamie Holden paying property taxes, and an HX, which I believe means homestead, from 1968. And then finally, a deed from 1980 when Mamie Holden's widower conveyed the property to himself and his granddaughter. So those are the records I would like to submit.
If you wouldn't mind passing those over so that we can take a peek at them.
Thank you.
And then follow-up question to you. You mentioned, actually it was mentioned by one of the neighbors, that there is a pipe that is on their property. Is that, can you talk a little bit about that? Is
Sure,
there
it
any
looked,
portion?
I don't recall it specifically, but when she showed the picture, it looked like a clean out for the bathroom.
Okay, so is there any portion of the physical home or any of its appurtenances that actually cross over the property line?
Not the physical home. I don't know if that drain, if the sewer pipe goes out, and then, I know it goes around the other side of the house, this side of the house, which would be the west side of the house. So, I don't know if it could be moved over. I'm not sure about that. But
We don't have the ability to grant you anything that would go on to anyone else's property.
Sure.
So if there's something that's on somebody else's property, it's something I think you're gonna have to deal with
Sure.
regardless of what we can or cannot do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if it's just the sewer line, then I'm sure we can figure it out.
Okay. I have some questions for the neighbors, but if anyone else has questions for
No, I
these
have the
folks,
same- probably
dig
the
in
same
now.
question
Mr.
you do.
Prester, you're up.
One more. Would you be opposed to adding a gutter on that side of the house?
No, I'd be
Keeping
happy
in
to.
mind that it must remain inside the property line?
Sure, yeah, I guess a gutter's 4 inches, what do we got, 7 inches?
It'd have to be
so-
a small gutter,
Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah, I'm happy to do that. But just so you know, the main structure of the roof pitches this way, so the back structure pitches the other way, so it's only 5 feet, a 5-foot roof. It's not the entire house that pitches back.
This one?
Do you know what year the neighbor's house was built, the neighbors who were here?
It's very new construction, recently completed, but
Relatively
they could
new
probably
construction.
answer that question.
Within
probably.
the last year, I believe.
Within the last year. Okay, thank you.
And at the time of their construction, the builder called me about the fence that was there and asked if he could put it right there, and I said it was fine, that whatever he needed, I'm happy to help. And so, you know, he did call me about the fence, because he said it looks like it's close to your house, and I said it's fine, wherever you need to put it, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Is the fence located on the neighboring property?
It's their new fence, yeah. I had an old chain link fence that was there, and they wanted to put up a 6-foot PVC fence and tear my fence down because there was no room to put both. So I said that, that's fine, we'll tear it down, and then they'll put their new PVC fence up.
Okay, anybody have any other questions?
I do have a question for the neighbor.
Okay.
I wanted to let everybody finish up with.
No, I think we're done with them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Question for you folks. When did you, well, I guess the first question is, did you buy that home already built from a builder, or did you construct it yourselves?
No, we were under contract with the builder, and the builder, it was sort of a
Is it common
semi-spec,
the builder had the
semi-spec
lot?
home. Yes, so they they went to the city to make sure that they had the proper sight lines, and then, of course, our house sat on our lot. So our concern is that somebody approved for there to be a house sitting where our house is. And so, that needs to be taken into consideration, that there is a structure impeding on that property.
Okay, when did you go into contract with your builder?
2 years ago?
Correct.
And you purchased this house in the last 2 years?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. And obviously this house was situated as it is when you bought the house? Your neighbor's house was situated as it is. There was no new construction on the neighbor's property. Is that accurate?
We did not build on the neighbor's property.
No. I'm sorry if I was confusing. To your knowledge, you didn't see anything change in the footprint of your neighbor's property in the last 2 years?
Yes, we saw, when we arrived at the lot, the fence that they were referring to was on the property that our house now sits on.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. The fence was there, but the fence is gone now, correct?
Correct.
Right. And, but the rest of the house, the structure itself, has it changed in any way over the past 2 years since you bought your house?
The neighbor's
Yes,
structure
yes,
or our structure?
The neighbor's structure.
Um,
Their position is the footprint hasn't changed since 1967. I'm just asking you if that's accurate. You wouldn't know back in 1967, but I'm just asking you over the last 2 years.
No, but we were not made aware of where our house and property were sitting in relationship to the neighbor's house at the time of purchase.
Okay, and that would certainly be something you could talk to your builder about. Okay, all right, I'm done, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? All right, applicant, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
It was mentioned by the neighboring property owner that the house is a rental, and that's true, it is. But the house was not cited for being a rental property, and it is fine for the house to be a rental property. It was also mentioned that the house needs painting. The house was not cited for needed painting. The house was not cited for any of those reasons. The City of Tampa Comprehensive Plan Land Use Policy 1.2.18 states that the city will promote harmony in the visual relationships and transitions between new and older buildings. New buildings do not need to imitate older development, but should be sympathetic to its scale, form, proportion, and materials. Other provisions of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan and the housing element speak to preservation of existing homes for affordable housing and to stabilize communities. Granting of this variance, this house has existed since 1967. It hasn't hurt anybody. It hasn't encroached on anyone's property. There was a chain link fence. It's been removed. Prior owner said she had that put up. That's not the problem. The problem seems to be that the neighbors, the new homeowners, don't like looking at the old home. And while I can understand that, that's not the standard here. The standard is hardship by this current owner. And we've addressed those hardship issues. There is a hardship, and the variance should be granted. Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion by the board to close the public hearing and move into board discussion and/or motion? Okay, board.
Well, it took a while for me to figure out why we were here and why we were hearing this, because normally we don't see cases in which homes were built in 1967, we're pushing 60 years or 50 years, if I'm doing math right. But you know, normally we don't encounter these things because they're either vested or nobody really cares about it. But here we have a situation where a builder built a house on the house next, on the lot next door, and perhaps put it too close. But I'm reminded of instances where folks will come in and build houses next to stadiums or airports and then complain about the noise or complain about the existing situation that's been there far longer than they have. I'm not saying that that's an analogous situation. I'm just saying that that's something that strikes me as similar. And what we have here is a situation where the house has been here a very long time in this situation, and I don't see why we shouldn't vest it as it is.
If I may make one quick clarification, the burden is on the applicant to prove to you by the greater weight of the evidence that they have a hardship or practical difficulty. As a matter of law, economic hardship is not a hardship that would justify a variance. And I think you are hearing this because it is not a legal nonconformity, and that is why you are hearing this application and why they are not going through the formal determination that it is a legal nonconformity. So I just wanted those clarifications on the record. Thank you.
And just to follow up on that, I appreciate that clarification. Certainly, we've talked about practical difficulties in the past as far as existing structures, as far as how they're situated on the property, and a modification of this footprint with an existing structure, in my mind, strikes me as a practical difficulty.
Go ahead, Mr. Pastor.
Well, I agree. I mean, you'd be removing the bathroom inside the house, so there's the practical difficulty of removing an existing function to an existing occupant. My question is, back to Ms. Mora, when you say it's not a legal non-conforming, that means that it doesn't have legal approval to not conform, right?
Correct. The code contemplates if something was built before the current requirements and they can prove that, then they can get a formal determination that they are legally non-conforming.
Right.
And in that situation, they do not have to come before you. They are allowed to exist until they have to tear down the structure or a substantial portion of, or something thereof. It's allowed to remain for a time period.
Right.
You're not hearing that in this instance. And
Right, so that was the point I was driving toward. We don't know whether or not the city permitted this, because there's no record for or against. And we don't have a record that the city did permit another structure, and we don't have a record that the city did permit this structure. Certainly is an odd one, but at the same time, it was the 60s, and we don't have any records from the 60s. So it's not legally non-conforming, but we don't know why. That's my point.
I've got a question.
I'm going to ask the same question that I always ask Ms. Mora, because I never fully remember the answer. Is there not a way to approve this structure but not carry that setback with the history of the property?
no, all variances run with the land. That's why the hardship has to be one related to the land.
But tied to the site plan?
It would be tied to the site plan, so they could tear down this structure tomorrow and build another house that would have that same encroachment.
But only for that width or for the entire length of the property?
For
15.
all of the area within the setback would be approved for encroachment for eternity.
No?
No. Wait, you have to explain this to us again, because as we've always talked about with the site plan, if they go outside of the footprint of this home, that's a change in the site plan, right? So if they build the same structure, except they double the size of the structure and continue to run at 0.59 inches, that's not the site plan, right?
Don't leave.
She's got to educate us every time.
Forgive me, I just want to use the
Okay.
the Wolf Elmo, whatever it's called.
Can you blow that
Yeah.
up? Thank you.
Yeah.
Whoa,
That's bigger.
that's good, I can read that.
To illustrate this. So the area that is shown within the setback, so it would be this area here, is vested for, if you approve the variance, this area is vested. It can be torn down, it can be rebuilt. However, keep in mind that they can build a structure that occupies all of the setback area plus this.
Right, but they cannot take that structure past the setback line except for in the yellow footprint.
No, they can build a structure that meets the setbacks. They can fill the entire envelope.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And then they also get this.
Right.
But they can't.
They would not
But-
get this. This-
Exactly,
this is
that's
the
my
area they would
question.
not get.
That's
They
what
do
we
not
want.
get that.
That's correct.
That's why it's tied to the site plan.
Okay.
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
And before you pull that off the Elmo, and I apologize for asking this question so late, what is the front setback on this structure currently?
I cannot read it. You might need to reopen the hearing and try and get some testimony on that.
Well, I mean, I can read it. It appears to be 8 point something feet. So why wouldn't they also be here trying to get that vested?
I object, there's been no notice of
Well, no, no,
violation
I'm
for
just-
that.
no, no, you
Thank
can't
you, I
talk,
just
I'm
want to put that
sorry.
on the record.
We might have to open a public hearing, but
Thank you.
It's the rear, isn't it?
Where'd you get the 8?
can you answer
Just
my
answer.
question?
Oh, I see, okay.
What they are noticed here for today is just that side yard setback. They may not meet other setbacks, and if they don't meet those other setbacks, then they would either need to come back for another variance, or.
So if they needed to pull a permit to do any work, they'd have to come in, if there is a front yard setback issue, they'd have to come back and get that fixed.
If they, yes, that is what they would
Okay,
have
and
to.
when
They
you
could
say
do that, or they could.
when you say they weren't noticed, who noticed them?
The notice that they provided to the public only noticed this side
The
yard setback.
their VRB
Their
notice
variance
to the
review board
public
notice.
did not notice the front setback.
Correct.
Other setback
Okay,
issues,
then
correct.
I may want to open the public hearing. That's all I have. Is there a motion to open a public hearing?
I so move.
All right, is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Applicant, please come up, and I apologize.
Thank you. Pamela,
Are you aware that the front yard setback doesn't meet current code?
code enforcement violation only listed the rear yard.
Right.
So we were not aware of that, or we weren't noticed of that, and as a matter of due process, it's not part of this hearing, notice for the applicant or for the public, for that matter,
Okay.
of that
Right.
particular issue.
Right. So, back to council, if we were to approve this, as you've already stated, if they ever pulled a permit on the existing structure, they would have to come forward and get that taken care of also.
Or remove the part that's encroaching, yes.
Right, right.
Correct.
Okay.
And
All right. Well,
might
since
I-
we're open for public hearing, how many other bathrooms are in this house?
There's 2 total bathrooms, one there and then one other one.
Okay, and this protrusion is a full bath, half bath? What
It's
is
a
it?
full bath with a laundry, washer, dryer.
Side-by-side washer, dryer?
It's stackable.
Stackable, and there appears to be steps going up to one side. There's a door there?
Yeah, there's no windows, there's one door going out to the side
Okay, and
yard,
that
yeah.
would go into like the laundry area? I
Yeah, you pretty
assume?
much open the door and there's the stackable washer and dryer and then the
Okay.
sink, toilet, and tub and shower.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Brown?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because there was discussion about whether this is a non-conforming use, and we did explore that. We understand the code was in existence at the time this house was built. It's possible a variance was granted then. The house was permitted. But those records, the city has informed us those records are not accessible. They're in a warehouse somewhere, but they're not accessible. So we can't get to them, and neither can the city.
Okay, all right. Well, that's for another time because it wasn't noticed in your application. All righty. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
I didn't look when I had it in my hand. Is the document that shows the taxes paid in 1968, does it mention at all the square footage of the home?
No, it does not.
Okay.
Is that it? All right, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I so move.
All righty. And board discussion and/or motion. Just rustling of papers. Okay, anybody else have any comments? I'll make a comment before you get started. I kind of tend to agree that this is a vesting situation of a very old structure. Probably doesn't have much of a lifespan. with the way redevelopment is going, which is, I think, evidenced by the new home being built next door. You know, whether or not the new homeowner was informed, whether or not it was disclosed exactly where the property lines were, that's between the current resident and their builder. You know, the applicant in this case didn't change anything. So I could support this, knowing that if anybody ever tried to pull a permit on this home, it might be really difficult to get the front yard vested too. And so it's kind of one of these situations where I could live with allowing this to continue as it is in its current form.
Well, with that said, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that variance request for case VRB 19-63, located at 4902 West Idaho Street, as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing, to reduce the side yard setback from 7 feet to 0.59 feet, with an encroachment for eaves and gutters, with the following conditions: that a gutter be added within inside the property line to prevent water from flowing onto the neighbor's lot off of this roof, and that said variance as conditioned be granted based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that this house was built in 1967, that there have been no modifications since it was purchased, or probably since it was built in 1967, to the footprint of this home, that there are no records to show whether or not this was approved at the time it was built, though it was apparently permitted back in 1967. And there is a practical difficulty in removing the existing non-conforming portion, as it is an existing bathroom and laundry room for the structure.
All right, I have motion by Mr. Feldman, second by Mr. Pastor. Is there any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Your application's been approved 5-0. Next case, please.
Towanda Anthony Land Development. This is item VRB 1965. The property address is 2901 West San Carlos Street. The applicant is seeking to remove a 27-inch grand tree located within the 7-foot
You
side
say
yard.
27-inch?
Excuse me, 37-inch.
Oh, okay.
Grand tree located within the 7-foot side yard setback to construct a single-family residence. Per section 1345, a grand tree or protected tree shall be permitted to be removed if the grand tree or protected tree denies or precludes reasonable use of a parcel of property. Reasonable use would also include the showing of alternative designs that were not feasible to pursue. The lot is zoned RS50 and the house was constructed in 1953. The applicant purchased the property in 2018. A tree consultation was conducted by staff in December of 2018. Natural Resources found the request consistent and had the following comments. A tree consultation was done in January 2019 to discuss the possibility of constructing a single-family residence around a 37-inch grand tree, live oak. The live oak tree was rated at B8 and was considered a grand tree. A 2-story home built without adjustments would require a large limb estimated at 16 to 20 inches to be removed. The large cut would lead to effective removal of the tree. To keep the tree The applicant would have to develop the property with a portion of the residence as a one-story with suspended flooring and a front and rear setback reduction. If the board approves this variance, inch-for-inch replacement is required for the removal of the grand tree. I'll now orient you with the site. Here's the aerial of
Maybe
the
not.
property.
Reboot.
Isn't this a braiding system?
That's why she thought we were gonna do it for 4.5 hours.
Here's the aerial of the site, here's the property, West San Carlos Street. Here's a photo of the property, and here's the tree in question. Here's another view of the property, and you can also see the tree. This is the site plan. This is the proposed request. And here's the grand tree. These are some alternative designs that were submitted. This is with the detached garage. This one is with the garage in the front. And also with the garage in the front. And Natural Resources is available for additional questions and clarification.
Good evening, Mr. Knox.
So, as stated earlier, there's a 37-inch grand live oak tree on the property. The live oak tree, as it currently stands, is about 3 to 4 feet from the existing structure. And the issue that Natural Resources encountered when we did the tree consultation was located with this limb here. This limb is about 16 to 20 inches in diameter. When we went out to the property, we made the conclusion that the limb cannot be removed completely, and the tree would survive. So we considered that effective removal if that limb was taken off. So we took some measurements, starting at 16 feet, and then we spanned over 18 feet to see how far we could actually get before we can avoid the limb. And we came up with 18 feet from the limb from the diagram that's located here, and we spanned up, and the highest we could go was 26 feet. So that's how we came to the conclusion of a 2-story home would be difficult to build under these conditions. A 1-story would be possible in that area if they were able to actually do the 1-story and then somehow step into a 2nd story and then extend their setbacks in the rear and the front. Any questions?
Mr. Pastor?
What was the rating on this tree?
This tree was rated B8.
B8.
B as in boy?
B as in boy.
Okay.
And it was 188 points. 175 points are required for a grand tree.
You know how you usually tell us it's really hard to determine how old a tree is? I would bet this tree is about as old as this house, because you'd never build a house this close to a tree.
That's a reasonable assumption.
So that's just a fun comment.
When was the house built?
It's like the mid-50s to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question for either staff member. Is the new tree code in effect on this? And if not, why?
Removal applications filed before June 1st process under the old code. After June 1st, they will process under the new code.
And this removal is tied to a building permit, or is it not?
The VRB application would be a removal permit request.
Okay. So I'm just trying to understand if they are denied removal under the current code, or past code, excuse me, is the new code available for them because it's a different set of rules?
The new code is available, yes. They could opt to proceed under it if that was their preference, or if they got a denial tonight, then they could also proceed under it, yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions of staff? Applicant, please come forward, state your name, address, and if you, go ahead.
If I may, just
Staff
very
has-
quickly, Mr. Feldman, you indicated that there had been a very brief ex parte contact regarding this application.
Yes, the applicant's daughter is a colleague of mine. She's actually in the audience. Danielle Brighter works at my law firm.
Okay. And your law firm is not retained in this matter?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And do you feel that you can remain fair and impartial in this matter?
I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Do you have any objection to Mr. Feldman hearing this application? No. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Name, address, and if you've been sworn.
Hi, I'm Dory Whiter. I live in Apollo Beach. Have been sworn in. I purchased this house in 2018, and I would like to build a modest two-story residential home. And for that reason, I would like to get a variance to remove the tree. Based on the information that you received, and I can show some stuff other, it looks like if the tree remains there, that it will be very difficult to build the two-story home, and it will be in some areas very, very narrow because I have the 7 feet setback on both sides, and if I need to stay away from the tree, about 10 to 15 feet, that gives me only like 21 feet in some areas, and some areas even less than that. So this is the hardship, that it's just impossible. I would like to improve the property for the property itself, and of course for the neighborhood, which most houses there are two-story homes. I have a couple of pictures that I would like to show. I don't know if so this house was built indeed in 1953. This is the tree, and the house, the plan is to turn it down because it's in a very, very bad shape. And there's another picture of the tree and another big oak tree on the corner of the property. One comment that I would like to make, this is a corner lot, so putting the garage can only be either to the left of the property. I cannot do it too close to the corner. Over here cannot because of the road, Marty. If I were to put the garage as an independent or standalone structure in the back, that it will take my entire backyard. And then my side yard will be my supposed privacy, but then I will have no privacy. On the other side of the street, there is the Palmacia park, so that would be difficult. So I would like to get the variance. My plan is to move to Tampa. As I'm getting old, I have 2 kids live here, and I would like to live close to my children, and I also work in Tampa, so the drive is kind of like getting a little difficult. Thank you.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Do I need to?
No, I mean, are you done sharing
yes,
with us?
Unless there are questions, I mean, I'll be happy to.
Well, no, we're going to come back to you, but are you
Okay.
finished for now?
Yes, please.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on or against this application? Seeing none, board, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff?
Just one little quickie question for the applicant.
Mr.
please.
Villa?
What would be the anticipated square footage of the new residence that you propose
About
to build?
2,500,
2,500?
yes.
So this, all of these renderings that you presented, they're all involving the entire thing being 2 stories, right?
Correct.
In other words, not part of it 2 stories and part of it 1 story, as was maybe
It will be
suggested.
2-story. What I showed it will be 36 by, this will be the max. This will be the 36 by 60. This is the property that I can do, and it will be a 2-story. So it's anywhere from 24 to 26. This is my plan, yes.
All right, so pretty much any of these other renderings are kind of in that 24 or 2,500 square foot range?
Well, the other ones that I
Or
showed,
would they be smaller?
like this one, for example, is that the question? I'm sorry. This is considerably narrowing my property, and over here it's only 21, and if that's with the garage in the back. But if I take this one, for example, which will be, again, it's 21 in here, it's only 5 in here, maintaining the setbacks, the garage, and over here I don't even have a flow to this part of the house. So it really hinders my ability to develop it in the way that will be appropriate and decent.
All right, thanks.
All right, any other questions? You got 5 minutes for rebuttal, based on the questions that were asked. You still have another 5 minutes if you need it.
Well, I actually had,
Actually, Mr. Feldman has a
I actually had a question.
Sure.
I'm just trying to get a sense of where this tree falls in the depth of the lot. Do you have a measurement? I mean, it looks like it's almost dead center between the
about-
front and the back.
It is about 42 feet from the property line in the back.
Okay.
So even if
Yeah.
I were
I mean, I
to
see it.
move the garage to the back, it will fall on my tree again. So I cannot build right on the tree. I need to still have the 10 or 15 feet away. So any way that I will go around it, if I were to preserve it, I just couldn't find any way to do that.
Did any of the alternative plans that, now, let me ask you about these alternative plans. These were alternative plans that Natural Resources worked up or that you worked up?
No, I worked out.
Okay.
Yes.
That's great. We appreciate when people bring alternative plans into us. Did any of the alternative plans consider encroaching into front setbacks or rear setbacks? It appears that Natural Resources suggested that to you. You don't have the option of doing that on your own, but is that
Well,
something that you looked at?
I think that originally what happened when we discussed it, when the arborist was there to look at things, and that was the only time, based on 25 feet, but it's actually only 20 feet, the setback in the front. So originally it was based on the 25 feet, which is incorrect. But if we're to move the garage, let's say even a little to the front, I still will have a very narrow passageway over here, and it will still not give me the flow to our house.
And something that was just reminded, because I was looking at this earlier, there's an oak tree on the north, yeah, this is north, look, north is going that way. That's on the south side. Southeast corner, there is a 4-foot oak.
This one?
Yeah.
This one?
Oh, that's even bigger, yeah.
Yeah, is that the
Okay.
one you're referring to?
Yes, it is. So
Yes.
if you actually moved in that direction, it would be bringing you closer to that tree.
That's correct.
And what about the 28-inch that is on the west side of the property?
That's completely on the other side of the house.
Right, so
Yeah.
what kind of tree is that, do you know?
I believe I think it's an oak as well,
Another-
but it's 28, yeah.
So there's not much room to work with here. Okay. All right.
Quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
Do you plan to keep the big 4-foot tree that's in the corner of the property?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
I'm sorry?
Are you done with your 5-minute rebuttal?
Yes.
We kept interrupting.
It's okay.
All right, is there a motion to close the public hearing and move into board discussion? And/or motion? We have a motion to close. All right, board, discuss.
So I want to say I appreciate the alternate plans, although they're terrible, but I think she knows that. There's no good options. I think this is one of those unfortunate situations where this tree has grown up in the middle of the property, very likely since the house was built. And it's a big, good condition live oak tree that is spanning out across more than half of the center of the lot, which makes it not even compliant with the house that sits there today, not even close to compliant with the house that sits there today, which means to rebuild anything with the 48-inch oak to the south and the one in the middle, it's a very difficult task. And if maybe had they known, they could have just waited and used the new code and would not have even come here, because it's very clearly in the heart of the buildable area. So I think, unfortunately, for this tree, it's got to go.
Any other comments? Ms. Long? No. I'm probably a little more familiar with the new code than the rest of the board members. That's not necessarily the case, what you just said. So, yeah, well, no, now's not time. But the new code does take into some small lots. This, by square footage of the size of the lot, would fall into the category. But there are other criteria that would come into play, physical criteria, as to whether or not this tree would actually meet the criteria to come out without coming in front of the VRB. So there are going to be some borderline cases like this one, probably, that we are still going to hear. Okay, so, but there are other things that change in the new code, which really have nothing to do with the VRB. So, yeah, I just concur with what you said. It's a small lot. It's an unfortunate, it's a great tree in a wrong location. They are preserving a very large corner tree, which is great to hear. And the mitigation requirement on this is going to be inch for inch, which is, you know, a lot of trees, and/or money's paid into the tree fund that would go back into the neighborhood and not just help your property, but help surrounding properties too. So, I mean, I could support this. Is there a motion?
Move that the variance request for case VRB 1965 for the property located at 2901 West San Carlos Street be granted. Oh wait, do I need to read something different for trees?
Yeah, reasonable use. Reasonable use, it's not a hardship.
I got it. Restart. Move that the variance request for case VRB 1965 for the property located at 2901 West San Carlos Street be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for removal of a grand tree based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof that the tree denies or precludes reasonable use of a parcel of property with regard to the 10 factors for determining reasonable use as set forth in section 1345 of the city code for granting tree removal, specifically that the evidence provided in the record in this public hearing showed that this tree is essentially in the center of the lot, and that the many alternate site plan or building plans presented were not feasible, and that the current house as it sits is not even compliant, and it precludes reasonable use of any redevelopment of the site.
All right, we have a motion for approval for removal. Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Long. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Your application's been approved, 5-0.
Thank you.
Next case, staff, VRB 1966, is that correct?
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, This is item VRB 1966. The property address is 1309 West Main Street. The applicant is seeking to remove 5 grand trees to allow for a mid-rise mixed-use multifamily development. Per section 1345, a grand tree or protected tree shall be permitted to be removed if the grand tree or protected tree denies or precludes reasonable use of a parcel of property. Reasonable use would also include the showing of alternative designs that were not feasible to pursue. The applicant is also seeking to reduce the percentage of trees retained from 50% to 42.4% for property over an acre to allow for the redevelopment of the site. The property is zoned NMU 35, neighborhood mixed use. The property has been owned by the City of Tampa Housing Authority since the 1940s. The lot was demolished in 2018 and is being developed in a public-private partnership with the applicant to revitalize the area. Natural Resources found the request consistent but had the following comments. The applicant is requesting a variance to remove 5 non-hazardous grand trees out of a total of 11 on site to develop multifamily mixed-use income housing and associated infrastructure. Natural Resources is in agreement with 4 of the 5 requested grand trees. Natural Resources is of the opinion that grand tree number 89 can be preserved, but during meetings, tree number 89 was suggested for removal due to potential construction-related hazards. In addition to the applicant's request to remove 5 grand trees, an additional variance has been requested to reduce tree retention from the minimum required threshold of 50% to 42.4 for a total of 81 trees out of 144 to be removed. If the board approved this variance, inch-for-inch replacement is requested for the removal of 5 grand trees and the agreement that no tree removal until the building application is approved. I'll now orient you with the site. Here's the aerial, and here's the property in question, Main Street, Oregon. Here's a photo of the property facing Main Street. This is another view facing Main Street. Here's a view facing Oregon. And here's the site plan of the proposed development. Natural Resources is available for additional comments.
Can you leave that site plan up there, or maybe he has his own, I don't know. Mr. Knox, we have questions.
Brian Knox, Natural Resources.
Could you point to the trees for us? I know that some are obvious because they're in footprints, but, and then which one is number 89? Because it's hard to read this site plan.
All right. This is a site plan that has 2 parts. Tree number 89 is located right here, in between this these 2 proposed buildings.
Okay, which are the other 4 that are coming out?
There's the trees that are highlighted in red are the ones that are proposed for removal. So these 3 trees here. And on the other part of the site, these 2 trees
Could
located
you
here.
push that up a little bit? We can only see part of it.
Okay, there we go. The tree
Yeah.
located here in the proposed retention pond, and a tree located here. This is in some of the proposed developments. There is an additional grand tree that's highlighted in purple here. That tree is considered hazardous, and we approved that one administratively for removal.
Okay. And all of these trees are about the same age, health, species?
Pretty much, they're mostly live oaks. There's some palms on the site. The West River project, there were trees that were built around buildings, or there were trees that were planted around buildings. I would assume that that was due to the conditions at that time where, AC units were not necessarily available for all of the units, so instead the trees provided the cooling that was needed on those sites.
I'm glad to see they got away from laurel oaks.
Well, there's probably some of those on the site as well.
Oh, okay. But none of the grants that are in question are laurels, they're all lives?
Let me double check that for you. Let's see. All 5 are live oaks.
Okay, we'll let the applicant do their thing. Any other questions for staff? Yes, you do, or no, you don't? No, you don't. Okay, applicant, please come forward, state your name, address, and if you've been sworn. You have 10 minutes.
Good evening, Jake Kramer with Stearns Weaver Miller for East Jackson Street, representing the applicant, and I have been sworn. Just wanted to give you kind of a bird's eye view of this project. This is a massive redevelopment that you've probably read about on the West Bank here in the city of Tampa. And we've got a representative from the Tampa Housing Authority here tonight because I want him to give you some background of this project. There's a couple of unusual things that I just want to start off with this application. The first one is that it's even before you, because generally with a large-scale redevelopment, especially an infill redevelopment project, these projects in the city would normally go through a PD process and the tree issues would be heard before city council. The difference here is that that the city was proactive and that the zoning is in place for the mixed-use development. So that's why the tree issues on this large-scale redevelopment are coming here tonight. It's also, I think, unusual, as you'll hear from our presentation, that when you have I think it's unusual the number of trees on this site that are being saved. I'll enter these into the record, but I wanted to give you an idea of some of the, these are tough to see, but for example, this photograph here, I mean, we have tree-lined streets that, I can't think of anywhere in Tampa where you get some of this great, beautiful live oak tree coverage, and the developers worked really hard to save as many of these trees as possible, and we've worked with our arborist in the city to save as many of the trees as possible and to allow some reasonable redevelopment. Okay, thank you. As you can see from the street, hold on a minute.
I'll give you an extra 30 seconds.
There we go.
All right.
Great, thank you. So the reason, I think this is important, but one of the reasons, this is a 1957 aerial, and what's interesting is this is not too long after a lot of these structures were built, and you can see the lines of trees that were planted. And so the reason we have so many of these great trees is because the owner's been a great steward of the land, and that they planted so many of these very early on in the 40s when this was built. And I think we can probably imagine that the tree code in the 1940s was a little different than what we have today. I'm also going to have David Smith, our land use planner, talk about some of the land development constraints we had in designing the site. And the final constraint that we have to keep in mind is this has also been in several news articles, but in yellow is a plume of contaminations, chlorinated solvents from a former chemical manufacturer near the interstate. And we started working with DEP to figure out how and whether this site could be redeveloped back in 2016. So DEP has the oversight authority for how this site gets redeveloped. We worked with them extensively. We also worked with the Southwest Florida Water Management District, and part of their approval process was overseeing where the utilities were going to be sited, because the idea here is that when you have this plume of contaminants, it's safe for people to live there, but you don't want stormwater ponds because you don't want to affect the groundwater. And so we've had to site we have very limited locations for where to site our stormwater ponds. So this is this is the second piece of the development plan that was shown. So you can see we cited the stormwater pond to stay out of the plume, and really that was a requirement of working with DEP and the Water Management District over the past almost 4 years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, and I want you to hear a little bit about, again, the history of the project, and then our land use planner will talk to you about the constraints we had in the design, and then finally our arborist is here if you have any questions.
Please state your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
Good evening, Leroy Moore, Tampa Housing Authority, 5301 West Cypress Street, as the applicant. I wanted to put the site plan up just to sort of give you a better perspective as to where the stormwater pond is here, as well as there's 3 trees that are located within this area, and then the one tree at T6. So T6 and parcel T3 are the 2 parcels that are the subject of this VRB. This is part of a massive 44-acre redevelopment of the old North Boulevard Homes site that was built in the early 1940s. Our developer partner Related, as well as Stearns Weaver, have worked tireless. And our initial instructions to them, as we have for all of our redevelopments, is to save that canopy to the greatest extent feasible. You see that reflected on all the redevelopments that we've done. It's crucially important to us. So we come for variance very rarely. And we do try to work around those trees. But in the interest of time, to stay within our 10 minutes, I want these guys to talk about the technical aspects of this plan.
Okay. Thank you much. David Smith, 401 East Jackson Street, Suite 2100. Planner with Stearns Weaver Miller. As indicated by the previous speakers, this is part of a West River Master Plan. It's supposed to be a mid-rise, high-density, mixed-use community, not the old barrack style that was there before. And because of that, it presented some practical difficulties. Infrastructure had to be put in. We have brick streets. We have tree-lined canopies. So the developer, even though the NMU 35 and NMU 35 zoning did not take into account the tree canopy that currently existed when they developed the regulations, the developer has. The developer has made tireless efforts to identify the prominent trees, to route and infrastructure through the project in order to avoid as many trees as possible, to locate the stormwater in the most appropriate location in order to provide for that situation. So I'll use the site plan that was discussed by staff. This particular plan shows the fact that we have numerous grand trees on the property. And these are the only 3 grand trees being impacted. This tree is at the entrance because all the utilities are coming in off of Oregon. So we're concentrating the utilities coming into the site, the utilities coming into the site on the other side of the property, and we're locating structures so as to provide for a central corridor that provides not only a large number of grand trees and other significant trees to be saved, but also puts them in an environment where they'll be able to prosper and continue for a long time.
These are additional grand trees that typically you would see these as street trees, but these are on our property. So I think when you look at this plan of development, and I'll show you some alternatives that we went through. Oops, excuse me, here we go. Alternatives that we went through is here we have the site plan. And I think this is in your file. So what you have is, at one time there was a central garage. It's much more efficient to build one thank you, one structure, precast to put it in place. However, if we did that, obviously it would ruin the core of these grand trees that are right in the center of the project and some of the most significant species. So the garages were split into two pieces. Much more expensive to do, but much better for the preservation of the trees. When you look at the trees that we have around the perimeter of the property, these buildings cannot be pushed towards them, they had to be pushed away. As you push the buildings away, you can see the outline of several of these redesigned structures, and these are multi-story structures, I think 4 to 5 stories? 8 stories, excuse me, 8-story structures. And these 8-story structures, this whole site's like a Rubik's Cube. You slide one this way, then the utilities move. If you slide it the other way, this other building gets impacted. So what we've done is we've put the 4 corners out here, preserving this tree canopy around the perimeter, have not only the utilities that are water and sewer coming into the site, but we also located the stormwater system so it comes down, zigzags through the site, out and across and over to T6 in order to avoid grand trees as well. I think the developer's done a fantastic job working with his infrastructure people as well as his architectural people to limit the number of impacts. One thing that's to note is even though we asked for what sounds like a large percentage,
I'm going to give you more time.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
50% of the trees, over 50% of the trees that are being removed are palms. So a very small percentage of the trees we're actually having removed are actually canopy trees. So at the end of the day, we're going to have still that canopy throughout the community. We're going to have tree-lined streets. We're going to have infrastructure out of the plume. And all those things together indicate the developer's interest in keeping the trees and limiting the impacts. One last comment on tree 89. While staff believes and suggested that we could maintain that tree, when you come in with utilities in the center of the site, they have to branch out north and south. To get the stormwater from all these structures, it has to go into a stormwater system and connect into the main trunk that's running through the site. So we have utility impacts that will be running underneath that root system, and we just do not believe the tree will survive that type of construction. And also, as we're coming in here with footers and foundations, we believe there will also be root impacts that would be negatively impact the tree. We'd love to save it, but we believe with those impacts, it's only prudent to ask for its removal. And in light of the fact that we're only removing 3 trees on this site and maintaining, essentially across the 2 parcels, like 11 grand trees, plus significant other ones. The point that shouldn't be lost also is because of the size of the trees that we're maintaining on this site, we have high removal, but we have no mitigation. We actually have a tree credit. I think that's all my time, but I believe, the development has really gone to great extent to try to preserve these trees. And this won't be the last time, because as other developments, come on in this system, as we know what the buildings are going to look like, we'll likely have to come back. But this is the first phase. We have funded buildings, and we're really on a time crunch to get this approved. Be glad to answer any questions. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that would like to speak on or against this application? Seeing none, board, do you have any questions for staff or the applicant? Mr. Pastor.
I have a question on the site plan with the retention pond.
Yeah.
Maybe get that one up there for you. Great. Yes, sir.
So those buildings on the south side there.
Yes.
What are those?
Those are townhouses.
Okay.
It's really the only thing that can fit, given the fact that the majority of the site, over half of it's occupied by the stormwater pond.
And which side of those is the front? Are they facing the retention pond?
No, the front would be facing the street.
The road?
And this street, by the way, has a very large canopy coverage on the front. That also, there's a power line running through the center. When we looked at this particular site, because of the construction of the stormwater pipe, and then as you come in and actually start constructing pads and put the utilities from the townhomes, we just did not believe that this was going to survive all the construction that was going to have to occur.
So this is going to sound like a really annoying question, and I know it, but I'm talking about the tree to the north. I'm just picturing this enormous retention pond right next to a row of houses, and I saw there's some buildings to the north that look on that retention pond. And I don't know how big of a live oak it is, but I was thinking how nice it would be to have at least one nice tree canopy hanging over this big expanse of, like a desert of water. And I'm an architect, so I have some idea of what it takes to do something like that. And you have to build a decent amount of land around it to support the root structure, and you have to determine if you had enough water retention or if you have to make it, 4 inches deeper to make up the difference in volume or whatever. But anyway, that's the only tree I was wondering about. The other ones make sense to me. Tree 89, I get what you're saying about the utilities and the foundations and everything that are going to be immediately around it. It's not a deal breaker for me either way. I was just thinking, God, I would hate to live there and look at that retention pond so barren, surrounded with like marsh and
Well,
whatever you're going to put
here's
around it.
one. Okay, yeah, I think the first thing I want to point out is on the tree side is while there will be a large retention pond up on this track, there is significant tree cover down what was Old Spruce Street, and that's the schools. The school is across, both the school, middle school, elementary school are on the other side of that street. There's significant tree canopy that is within the right-of-way that, yeah, there'll be an expanse of water, but you're not going to be just looking straight across into nothing. There's very high tree canopy along the entire side. And not to, make small your concern, but I think it's not like this will just be, a pond and then you're looking into houses or you're looking into buildings. There is significant coverage on the other side.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Just, if not, just for my own better understanding, could you show the parcel, the phase 1 parcel in question, could you bring up the rendering, the aerial rendering that you had?
Oh, sure.
And kind of point to where phase 1 is? I realize the rendering may not match because that was probably done.
It gets pretty close.
Is it close? Okay.
So here's the interstate. This right here is Main Street.
Okay.
The block that we're talking about really is right here. And then the next block is over here.
So where would the retention pond be?
The retention pond
Let's show them the color rendering that we
is, well, generally, I think he was looking at the master plan, so yeah, we can show them that.
The one with the different colors.
But this one here would be right back here. So it's over one over right here, I'm sorry.
That's it.
Yeah, right here.
That's the retention.
So what you have is this is the lowest part of the site. We have the DEP conceptual permit that basically says, hey, this is where it can go. It's the lowest part of the site. There's already outfall structures there from the city stormwater system. So it's not more than the logical place for it. It's the place that it needs to go.
It's the place for it, right, okay.
It's the place it needs to go.
Okay, and none of this is floodplain, right? It's all high and dry?
I think we're good.
Okay, because obviously fill dirt, trees don't like fill dirt either.
Right, well, and I have our engineer, I don't know what happened tonight, he was going to be here tonight, but that was one of my questions I texted him, is that, we had fill on other, there's a lot of fill issues coming our way with the new FEMA maps. We don't think that is an issue here, but if it is, it would just exacerbate the situation.
So I'm still having to look, because your pen was jumping all over the place.
Sorry.
Maybe you could give me a different site plan to give me an idea of what percentage of phase 1 is this total project?
Oh, this particular project, as far as phase 1 goes, okay, we're looking at.
You might want to slide that up a little bit.
Okay.
Push
Here
it
we
up.
go.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
So we have T3, which is this block right here, then this is T6. So as we come down in the future, and again, these master plans have evolved over time.
Right.
So this is where the pond is, this is where the townhomes are, this is T3. The next lot's coming in, this one's under construction right now, the Renaissance. There's a rehab occurring right here in the old Bethune Towers. So they're on their own block. It was also one of the blocks that had probably the least trees coverage of all. There was no requirements for any variances or mitigations on it. So as the next ones come over, it's likely that these blocks will be the next activity that will be occurring, likely the one to our east. And this one, while it shows, you know, an open space or recreation area associated with maybe the school relocating, those are things that have yet to be negotiated.
Right.
And, you know, it's a bridge too far right now.
Is T4 and 5, are they similar in their existing tree canopy to T3?
They're very similar in the location of the trees. You have them out to the side. You have a spine that's running in the center.
Which is a street that's being vacated, right?
Right. What we have right now, most all the streets are going to be public streets once we get the master plan done. All the streets in here, except two little holes in the donut, have been vacated.
Okay.
So they all belong to the developer.
Okay.
And so what's important to the developer, while they would normally be right-of-way trees, they're actually part of our property. So we're trying to not only avoid impacts to what would typically be our trees, but also right-of-way trees when we have to do utility crossings, when we have to redo any streets. We're trying to minimize all those impacts in order to preserve this canopy, because, well, you can't recreate it. I mean,
Right. But all of the streets that are remaining are still city right-of-way streets, correct?
All the streets in here, there's a little piece here and a little piece here that are city right-of-way. All the other have been vacated.
Oh.
But during redevelopment, those streets will be repaired, upgraded, and they will be rededicated to the public.
Rededicated back to the city?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay, that's it for me. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, based on all of those questions, somebody has 5 minutes of rebuttal.
Jake Kramer again for the record. Thank you for your time. I don't have anything else to add other than we would like to, we have quite a few graphics here, so we'd like to enter those into the record.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just one additional piece of information to add. Brett Green, 1800 North Rome Avenue. I was sworn in.
Okay.
In addition to modifying the footprint of the plan numerous times, we also increased from 7 stories to 8 stories to further shrink the size of these buildings. We have funding requirements that, you know, set forth the number of units that we're required to build. So we're trying to fit everything in here. And as David mentioned, it's a jigsaw puzzle trying to fit everything in. So.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. No other questions. There's a motion to close the public hearing. All right. Board discussion and/or motion. Wow.
I think it's a great looking project with a good purpose, and we clearly put a lot of thought into the trees. Splitting a garage is a relatively expensive proposition. I know because I've been looking at that some lately. And to do that is solely for the benefit of the trees. So kudos to them for putting in that effort and being willing to put some of that cost in. And making your buildings higher also has some cost to it. 7 and 8 stories, maybe not so much, but still a little bit. And so I think that I can support everything they're asking to do for the greater impact of the site.
Mr. Feldman?
I would add to that something that was pointed out early on by Natural Resources, and I made a note that they said that they agreed with 4 of the 5 grand tree removals, and only the 5th was in question, but we heard some testimony about that 5th tree and why it would need to be removed. And it sounds like all of the removals, though it's always terrible to lose these trees, all make sense. So I'm in agreement.
Ms. Long? Mr. Villa?
It's one of those greater good
Yeah, I just want to add that I'm very impressed by the number of trees that they're saving and the fact that they actually have a credit, at least in phase one. That's kind of why I was asking the questions about how does this relate to future phases, because I drive by this site a lot. I've often wondered, how are they going to save those trees? Because they make other builders save trees. I'd like to buy some credits, can I?
I just want to know if Tico's going to be nicer to those trees.
No,
than the
probably
other
not.
trees.
Probably not. No, I shouldn't say that. Tico is good to work with, especially when they're underground. These will probably be underground utilities. But yeah, I think they should be commended for the job that they're doing. So is there a motion?
I'll give it a shot. The only thing I don't know that we have specific motion language for removal of multiple grand trees for a reduction of 50 below. Should we just use the regular tree language, or do you have one for that one as well in your bag of tricks?
As I recall, the removal of more than 50% under the current code could fall under either a hardship or under the reasonable use criteria. So if you wanted to review the entire thing as a reasonable use criteria, I believe that would be permissible. Or you could do that as two separate motions.
Or do you want to give it a shot?
Before you get going, didn't Miss Anthony note 2 conditions that Natural Resources was requesting? Now, one of them was inch-for-inch replacement, which might be required anyway. I don't know if we need to condition. But there was a second condition she mentioned, and I don't remember what it was. And I don't know if it's something we should consider
I think
actually
if it's
conditioning.
code-related, it has nothing to do with us.
The inch-for-inch replacement is a code requirement, and that actually cannot be waived or changed, so it's not needed for that specifically to be a condition.
I don't remember the other one.
Ms. Anthony, did you have another condition that we should be placing on this, or was that a condition that needs to be dealt with at permitting?
Tawanda Anthony Land Development, there is a second condition that Natural Resources would like to include in the motion. The argument that no tree removal until the building application is approved.
I don't see a problem with that. Do you, legal, anybody here or not? Okay. All right. Go ahead. Blaze away.
Somebody has to make notes for our minutes and review the minutes, so just give me a moment. All right, I got it. I'm ready. I got it. All right. I move that the variance request for case VRB 19-66 for property located at 1309 West Main Street be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for removal of multiple grand trees and to reduce the trees from 50% to 43%. Based upon the petitioner meeting burden of proof that the trees deny or preclude reasonable use of the parcel of property as it's planned with regard to the 10 factors for determining reasonable use as set forth in section 13-45G of the City Code for granting tree removal as stated and the evidence provided in this public hearing, and so that I do not forget, upon the condition that no tree removal occur until the building permit is issued, and that the evidence presented at the public hearing is that the builder is preserving a substantial number of trees, that the removal of virtually all of the trees that are being removed has been agreed upon by Natural Resources as appropriate per the site plan, that the builder is addressing things like a pollution plume and trying to situate utilities and stormwater on this site around the numerous buildings that are being constructed.
Just as a point of clarification, if I may, I believe that the reduction is from 50% to 42.4%. If you would like to clarify your motion.
Let me look on the petition.
To clarify, the petition was at 43, but we went to 42.4 in consultation during the application process.
And that was what was noticed?
We have determined that that is appropriately noticed,
All right.
yes.
So 42 point what percent? 42.4%. With that clarification, I will reassert the motion.
Second. All right, Mr. Feldman, motion for approval, seconded by Mr. Pasteur. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Your application's been approved, 5-0.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Is there an applicant here for VRB 19-18? Why is the photo over there? Is that the missing applicant? Oh.
Oh, I thought that was the guy who owned the 1960.
No. All right, so we need a motion to continue VRB 19-18?
I think by your rules of procedure, that would continue for 2 months, so it would go to the August 13th.
Automatically.
No,
we
it
still
should be a
have-
motion, yeah.
Yes, we need a motion.
To August, correct, yes.
I move that VRB 1918 be continued to August 13th, 2019.
All right, second by Mr. Pastor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nope.